every time someone has a unfortunate experience here, we get, at City Council, we tend to get those emails. So it's nice to see a more balanced presentation on, and that people who visit the city share in the same pride that those of us who live in the city have in Portland. So thank you for your good work. Aye.
Hardesty? Aye. Daily?
Well, thanks for the presentation and thanks for the reality check on how the rest of the world perceives Portland. It's easy to get caught up in the social media echo chamber, but I know it's true that the challenges that we're facing in Portland are challenges that cities across the country and actually around the world are facing. So that is helpful. I look forward to working with you in the areas that I mentioned, and I vote aye.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all your work. I've been on the Business Development Fund board for over 10 years now, and I really appreciate how well Travel Portland is run, and that's very much due to you, Jess. So thank you for you and your team doing an amazing job. Many of you know that I was a registered nurse before I got on the council, and I worked the evening shift for 27 years. So the Travel Portland's Development Fund board is the only 8 o'clock meeting that I agree to attend on a regular basis, and certainly the only one that I enjoy. And I would like to look at the rate. There's hundreds of conventions that come to Portland, and the board looks at can we give grants to make it possible for these conventions to come, and then we get the room taxes so that we then have more money that comes to various sources. It's always amazing to me just what a range of different professions A, have conventions, and B, bring them to Portland. And so when we think of our entire, it's not only the economic impact of the taxes, it's also bringing all of these brain power, these talents, these varied things, and people who come to Portland and say, wow, this is really nice. And it's partly due to why we have so many people coming to live here is that they visit and then they stay. And I think it's a very good thing. We do need to have a community discussion about how do we get more than room taxes, since we don't have a sales tax.
We need to get more homeless people to sleep across from the convention center.
How else can these visitors contribute to our entire community and pay more
protest that
ways,
Jeff Black did
not having to the room tax that
one of the most interesting protests I've ever seen.
Excellent report, I appreciate it.
What he did, I compare it similar to those people trying to knock down monuments and stuff. Because it was his belief that
Next item, please.
Neil Goldsmith shouldn't be shown respect by having his picture in there. And he said, you know what? I'm going to take it. That's a powerful protest. Does that mean we go now to Sam Adams' picture?
Well, there's talk about it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and should we just demand that it be taken down? Just demand it. So maybe we should have some protests on that. If you can dig up some information on why we should do that, I'd like to see
Our
it.
latest audits. The types of audits that we conduct are comprehensive assessments of city programs or operations against performance criteria. The criteria may include sources such as city charter and code, national standards, professional standards, or a bureau's strategic plan. The audit process has 3 phases. The planning phase involves identifying the appropriate criteria and meeting with management and staff to understand their work and any barriers that may keep them from achieving their goals or performing optimally.
I don't know.
By the end of the planning phase, we can establish
could
the
have been
scope of our
screaming out
audit.
there.
Yeah,
and
there's a protest going on out
discuss
there.
it before we begin field work, which is the second phase of the audit. Field work is guided by a handful of objectives designed to assess whether the program or operation is meeting expectations of the criteria. If there are gaps between the criteria and the actual performance, we identify them as findings. Findings become the substance of our report and the basis from which we make recommendations for improvement. We have 3 performance audits to present today. The first assess whether the city is aligned with national standards to prevent data loss. The second focused on 2 Bureau of Environmental Services programs to manage restoration projects and build what are known as green streets. This audit is an example where better criteria, in this case, completed environmental plans, would help management deploy resources to highest need projects and evaluate program effectiveness. The The third audit looked at the program the city created in the Office of Management and Finance to address some of the side effects of people living in tents and makeshift shelters on city property. The program began as a temporary response to people living outside, but has evolved into a multifaceted program spending $3.6 million annually. Before we begin, Mayor, I'd like to remind you that no council action at the end of our presentation today is necessary. We are here strictly for information sharing purposes. And so we will begin with the data loss prevention audit.
Would you like to mention the follow-up process, or would you like to
Yes,
review
I
that?
forgot to mention, we have started this year publishing work that we've always done but haven't published, which is we always go back after an audit and check on the progress that a bureau is making. And we started to publish the results of those things, and we have one out currently on the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then we have one also on the Private for Hire Transportation Uber Lyft program.
Where do people find those?
You can find them on our website. You can also find them in our office.
And I think
Easier said than done, finding them on the website. I'll just spread it for everyone.
we're happy to bring them by, and I think there's one in your packet as well. Thank you.
And maybe the website for the listening public, could you just say it?
It is portlandoregon.gov/audit services. Commissioners, I'm Kari Guy, I'm the Audit Services Director, and I'll describe our first and shortest audit. In October 2018, we assessed the Bureau of Technology Services' overall approach to data loss prevention, and we also looked more specifically at the Bureau of Human Resources data loss prevention practices. Data loss prevention is the practice of detecting and preventing unauthorized access to sensitive or confidential information. It can be deliberate or inadvertent, it can occur physically or electronically. For this audit, we contracted with an IT data security specialist. They conducted a number of tests around the city systems, including reviewing the overall policies, procedures, roles, and responsibilities for data security in the city. They conducted after-hours desk reviews to look for unsecured laptops or exposed hard copy data in various Bureau of Human Resources offices. They reviewed access controls and lockout settings for our computers, electronic systems, and they observed BTS Bureau of Technology Services tests that were designed to prevent or detect data loss, among many other tests. The audit found that overall, the city's approach to data loss prevention was sound. The city is moving toward implementation of the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework, and that's a national best practice. However, the area audit also found some areas of vulnerability, and in a separate confidential report, we made 27 recommendations to strengthen the city's data security systems. The Bureau manager is committed to implementing those recommendations, and we will follow up in 1 year to make sure that's done. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Pape, and I'm a performance auditor, and I led our December 2018 audit of environmental services restoration projects in Green Streets. This is the second in a series of 2 BES stormwater management audits. We released an audit on private stormwater management in July of 2018, and we'll be following up on those recommendations this summer. Portland residents rely on restoration projects in Green Streets to improve water quality, restore wildlife habitat, and prevent flooding. But without formal methods to select projects and document outcomes, the city may not meet those goals. In 2018, the Bureau spent nearly $13 million in construction and maintenance for projects to treat rainwater runoff, including restoration projects in Green Streets. However, there was no formal method to track and report progress towards goals. Instead, the Bureau relied on piecemeal reporting and staff assurances. The Bureau uses restoration projects to meet watershed health objectives, such as improving water quality and habitat. Restoration projects include planting native vegetation and land excavation to create wetlands. Projects can vary widely in size, cost, and complexity. We looked at 3 projects based on input from staff: Albert Kelly Park, Luther Road, and Mason Flats. Green Streets are recessed planting strips extended from roadside curves. The Bureau uses green streets to treat and slow water runoff. The channels are planted with vegetation to filter pollution and slow and absorb stormwater. There are more than 2,000 green streets in Portland. We had 3 findings related to restoration projects at green streets. Our first finding was that restoration projects at green streets may not have addressed the area's highest needs. Despite intentions going back almost a decade, the Bureau did not have a stormwater system plan in place to guide the investment of capital spending for restoration projects in green streets. Existing plans were not enough. The Portland Watershed Management Plan, systems plan for the combined sewer system, and watershed level plans did not meet the necessary criteria. Only a stormwater system plan will assist the Bureau with defining the areas of the city that are at the greatest risk for threats such as pollution, habitat loss, and local flooding. Our second finding was that it wasn't clear that restoration projects met environmental and water management goals. The Bureau cannot demonstrate that its restoration investments were making overall progress towards watershed goals because of inconsistent and piecemeal reporting. The Bureau has affirmed the need for reporting restoration project outcomes, noting that reporting could provide benefits such as the ability to connect restoration project outcomes to watershed goals. The Bureau can't report on overall progress because there's no inventory of restoration projects on which to base reporting. None of the projects we reviewed had quantifiable goals, and there are no protocols for consistent monitoring or data collection. Our final finding was that there was no reporting on Green Street condition to ratepayers or regulators. The Bureau cannot demonstrate to regulators or ratepayers that the $1 million it spends annually on Green Street maintenance kept them in functioning condition. A majority of Green Streets, 53%, were not inspected as required in the spring of 2018. The Bureau did not have a method to summarize 8 separate condition scores for reporting or monitoring to ensure that staff met inspection and maintenance standards. The Bureau did not report on whether Green Streets were in functioning condition as required. Instead, it reported a total count of inspections and maintenance activities. In 2017, approximately 40% of Green Streets were not maintained at least 3 times, which was the standard, and 70 were not maintained at all. Okay. So, for our recommendations, to ensure that projects are cited in the highest priority areas, we recommended that the Bureau should commit to an implementation schedule for components of the stormwater system plan and create a method to use the risks identified to evaluate capital projects. To demonstrate that restoration projects met goals, we recommended that the Bureau develop an inventory of restoration projects and track information such as cost, location, project goals, and outcomes. Ensure that all projects had quantifiable goals that were tied to the goals of the Portland Watershed Management Plan or that reduced risks identified in the stormwater system plan. Regularly report project results to ratepayers in a way that explains the connections between projects and outcomes. Number 5 was the one recommendation the Bureau didn't really commit to. They said that they were working towards connecting the individual restoration projects to the quantifiable metrics in the watershed report cards, but the report cards are only issued every 4 years, which may be too long an interval for adaptive management or noting trends. To provide reports about Green Street, to demonstrate that restoration projects successfully met goals, we recommend. I'm sorry, I'm getting very confused.
It's okay. We're not as scary as you make me. We're others.
To provide reports about Green Street condition, we recommend that the Bureau define quantifiable standards to describe functioning condition for Green Streets, update operation and maintenance guidelines that support functioning condition, and create oversight procedures to ensure that staff follow operation and maintenance guidelines. I meant to stress that the Bureau assisted us with coming up with recommendations, and they were really helpful in creating concrete recommendations that they are going to follow up on. We'll follow up with staff in December and let you know how they're doing implementing these recommendations.
Is that Eli?
I don't think so.
Good morning, my name is Christine Adams Wanberg. I'm a performance auditor and I led our March 2019 audit of the city's camp cleanup program.
Might be.
The Homeless Urban
Think
Camping
we-
Impact Reduction Program was created in 2015 and it takes complaints about camps, assesses site conditions, and removes trash and camps on city property. It removed 2.6 million pounds of garbage in fiscal year 2018. It's a fairly new program for the city and we wanted to see how well it was performing, such as looking at the site assessments and cleaning, if it was meeting legal requirements for notice, if the crews were respectful, and how the program was responding to complaints. We found that overall the program